My name is Barbara Grosh, and I'm the president of the League of Women Voters here in the Rochester metro area. And I want to welcome everyone who's here tonight. I think some of you are from uh, Albany, if I'm not incorrect, because you guys are looking at the exact same questions we're looking at. So we welcome you and would love to hear your thoughts as we go along. So this meeting is being recorded and it will be put on our YouTube channel soon. Um, and this is the first of several discussions that we're going to be having. So let me lay those out. We're going to hash over how it works, make sure people understand it. Think about some of the choices that we need to make if we decide to propose this as a ballot measure in Monroe County, or not in Monroe County, in Rochester, in the city of Rochester. Um, and then on the 31st of January, we are holding our annual advocacy meeting, and we will talk about it again and get our membership to decide whether they want to go ahead, whether we want to go ahead with pushing this at the city level. Um, and if that happens, then in early February, we'll have another webinar. We'll get some legal experts on and we'll look at the city charter in more detail and think about how we should word whatever proposal for amendment is involved. So that lays out the course that we're going to be following in the next few weeks. At this point, I'd like to introduce David Green. David is the organizing director for Unite New York, which is an electoral reform nonprofit, operates in New York. I think they're affiliated with a national group. So they've been involved in a number of campaigns for and advocacy for ranked choice voting. And I'm going to ask David to walk us through some details just to make sure everybody's uh, understands exactly what we're talking about. And before we're done tonight, I want us to walk through some of the choices that we will make as far as what we actually propose for the city of Rochester, because there's a few different variations on how RCV and party primaries, all party primaries, can work. So, David, let me see if you should be able to share your screen.
Let me see if I can. I think I can. Yeah.
Okay, take it away.
Let me. Oh, sorry. One sec. Uh, okay, great. Yeah. So happy to be here, everyone. Thank you for coming to talk about election reform. It's my bread and butter. It's a great deal of fun. I hope we answer lots of questions tonight and have a great discussion. Unite New York is a statewide organization. We're actually not affiliated with a national group. We're friends with lots of national groups, but we just try to focus on New York and making New York work better. We have five pillars that we focus on very closely. So those are two of those are what we're going to be discussing tonight: ranked choice voting and open primaries. Our others are ballot initiatives, allowing ballot initiatives on a statewide level, getting reasonable term limits in the state of New York, and improving ballot access for non-major party candidates. So that's kind of our wheelhouse as a whole. So given that two-fifths of that is what we're going to talk about tonight, it's a pretty hefty chunk of what we focus on. In this presentation, I'm going to walk through what is involved with a all-voter primary, what that means, what that looks like, as well as ranked choice voting. I'm going to do an explainer and hopefully answer many of your questions about what this system is. So yeah, let's do it. So right now in New York State, there are several things that are a bit broken about the way we do voting. We currently have really low turnout in our primary elections. It hovers around 15%. We have 3.5 million registered voters in New York who can't vote in our closed primary system. That's about 1 in 4 New Yorkers. Our incumbent reelection rate is more than 80%. You're seeing a lot of the same people floating around, and only 10% of New Yorkers think that New York is actually ahead of the curve in election reform. So there's not a lot of faith in that either. So with regard to primaries, our current situation in New York is that Each major party, Democrats and Republicans, can hold a primary, which only voters affiliated with that party can participate in. Accordingly, there is pretty low turnout because that's a pretty small pool of people in an election that is not the big November election that everyone hears about. So combine those two factors, that's why we get that low turnout. And in really blue or really red areas, the winner of the closed primary usually faces no meaningful competition in the general election. So you're having two elections, one of which is like not competitive at all, rather inefficient. And yeah, and then you're having most voters excluded from the winner deciding the winner of that primary and therefore the winner of the general election. And so a lot of people are shut out of the system. New York is one of only 10 states to have fully closed primaries. We're pretty unusual in this. And so would be nice not to have that. Like a side note, several states have, like Massachusetts, where I'm originally from, have a system called semi-open primaries, which is a system where if you are not affiliated with either party, you can walk into election day and say, "Hey, I'd like this ballot. Hey, I'd like that ballot," and then you vote in whichever party primary. So but there are various systems around the country. But I'd love to talk about all voter primaries in particular. It's a very nice system. Basically, this would be for a primary, you would have all candidates listed on one ballot. You would still have party designations, and then that would help winnow the field. That would be like the purpose of the primary is get this big field of candidates smaller. Voters from like any or no party are allowed to vote in that election. And then when we get to the general election, when you have fewer people, you're going to have a certain number of the top voters from the primary compete. Some examples of this across the country are that in California and Washington, they have this system and the top two compete. And then in Alaska, the top four compete using ranked choice voting, which we'll talk about. That system helps achieve a majority winner in that election because otherwise you'd have a lot of vote splitting between those general candidates. What can also happen is that you just don't have that many candidates running, so there's not even like a need for a primary. This happens like in Alaska where they have this system. They often don't use it. They often don't have a primary and they just have a general election because not that many people ran. But sometimes in a lot of municipalities in like Minnesota, California, Maine, Oregon, other states, you don't have a primary at all on a local level. You just have one election in November, and that is the election, and then people vote in that. So there are a lot of different systems that exist out there. So reasons to do an all voter primary system to open things up are that, again, you have a huge amount of people in New York who aren't even able to participate at all. This is interestingly disproportionately young people as people are registering to vote more. I know y'all do a lot of voter registration. You might be seeing a lot of people registering and not picking a Democrat or Republican affiliation. That's very, very common. And so the majority of Gen Z and millennials are unaffiliated with either major party. So it's just like this huge pool of people that are being completely shut out. Our taxes pay for these primaries, and yet we can't all participate. They have really low turnout. And then from the candidate perspective, an all voter primary would select candidates that best represent the district. If the candidate has to appeal to everyone, you're going to have them, represent everyone. So they have that incentive shift. So that's nice. All right, let's have a longer conversation about ranked choice voting. What is ranked choice voting? So with ranked choice voting, you can rank multiple candidates in the order that you prefer. That's the idea. So where is it used? Going back to 2000, it was not used very much. Used in like Cambridge, Massachusetts, Arden, Delaware, not very common. But moving through the years, we see more places picking it up. And now we're like full snowball mode. It is the hottest thing in town. And so it is used in New York City, but it is also used in lots of places in California, Minnesota, Utah, Colorado. It's used statewide in Maine and statewide in Alaska. So yeah, lots of examples of its use. It's also banned in a lot of red states after Sarah Palin lost the election in Alaska in 2022. Some Republicans were not very happy, and then they made it sort of a principle of like, hey, maybe we should ban this thing. And so there are like 10-ish states that have banned it. So that's fun too. Yeah. And then in New York City, in particular, there's an interesting history that actually was used. Proportional ranked choice voting was used mid-century as part of the knock-on effect of the progressive era. They were like, "Hey, how can we adjust our system to include more people?" And so they started using it, and it was used for 10 years. And then it got the first woman on the city council. It got the first Black person on the city council. And then there was a Black communist who got elected. And then they all freaked out and they said, we can't do this anymore. This is too inclusive. We're getting all sorts of opinions. And so they shut it down. So yeah, then we didn't have it after that. But in 2019, there was a charter revision process in New York City, and they put ranked choice voting on the ballot for party primaries, not the general election. And it passed with 73% of the vote. So it's been used since then in 2021, 23, 25. Yeah, so we've gotten a lot of press about that. All right, so how does it work? So right now, voting looks like this. You can have a crowded field and express a preference for one candidate. With ranked choice voting, it looks like this. So you can, beyond your first choice, the most normal system is that you can list up to 4 backup choices. So you don't need to rank all of them. You can rank as many or as few as you want. However, ranking strengthens your voice and your power. So it is recommended. If your first choice can't win, then your vote transfers to your second choice. And it allows people to vote honestly without feeling like they're going to waste their vote. Because if you really believe in your first choice, but you don't think they can win, you can put a backup choice. You could probably think of examples where this would be nice in your life, either in a primary or in a general election. So yeah, that's the deal. Does that kind of make sense? You don't have a good way of communicating with me, but generally you're saying my favorite, second favorite, third favorite, that sort of deal. We'll be able to try that later. It'll be great. So that's the idea. As far as how ranked choice voting ballots are counted, what we're going to do is we're going to count up all the first choice votes. So we see in this example that these are the first choice votes, and actually someone has over a majority. Someone has 55%, over 50%. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, actually, you won. You got over 50%. Oh my God, you got a majority. That's what we want. So that's done. We don't need to do anything else. Let's look at another example though, where there's no majority in the first round. And you can kind of imagine that there's like a orange party and a purple party, or like these people have similar views on a color basis. So what we're going to do here is that we're going to count up all the first choice votes. These are they. And then we're going to eliminate the candidate that has the fewest first choice votes. So that's this 5% person here. We're going to eliminate them and redistribute based on second choices. So if you had voted for that 5% person, your vote would be transferred to your second choice. So we can see that most of those votes transfer to the other orange person here, but then a small number of them transfer to a purple person. And then now we don't have a majority still. So could someone come off mute and say what we should do now, following that same pattern?
Knock out the lowest vote getter.
That's a great idea, Barbara. Let's knock out the lowest vote getter. So we're going to eliminate this 20% person here, and then we redistribute. And we see that actually the purple party sticks together pretty well. And a large number of votes went to the other purple person. So actually they get 55%, they get over 50%, they have a majority, and so they're the winner. So that is how that works. Yay. It's also called instant runoff voting because it's like you had a runoff election and went back and voted again, except you don't need to because you already said your backup choices. So
David, I'm going to interrupt you. Can you move
yeah,
back a slide?
yeah.
Okay, so let's look at this. So what you see here is that, like, look at the first round. The purple voters, the purple candidates split their party's vote. And how many times have you heard people complain about someone joining the election because they're going to split the vote and throw it to the enemy? Which, if they used first past the post, the person who got 40% would win. So that would be true, and everyone would be mad at the lowest getting purple candidate. So this really relaxes the anxiety around who's in the race. I think that's really noticeable. Okay,
And
go
I
on.
do want to ask, are there any initial questions after this explanation of how it's counted? Because I'm going to talk about all the reasons to do this, but any initial questions on this?
Yeah, feel free to
Okay.
raise your hand or speak up.
you list the parties, right? It was in Chinese on my slideshow, but you do list the parties of the people, correct?
Yes, this is yeah, yes. That's what doesn't make this a great example. I think I on another version I changed it out. Yes, you would list the parties of people.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
great question.
What if there's a tie between the final two, an exact 50-50?
That would be the resolved the same way that you would resolve it now. So in different laws, it's written as you have to draw straws or you have to flip a coin or whatever. Yeah, it's. I haven't seen any examples of it happening because it is just so unusual to have a full on
Yeah.
tie.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool. All right, I'll keep rolling, but we'll keep the floor open. So why even vote this way? So there's no more lesser two evils. You won't have to say that anymore. It reduces divisiveness and toxicity. Politicians have to work for your vote because they need that majority. And then it makes government better reflect the voices and identities of the people, representation. So with regard to lesser two evils, you can really vote for the candidate that you really want. You don't have to worry about handing the victory to a candidate you hate. And so this actually has really positive effects for both minor candidates and major party candidates, which is fascinating. So a minor candidate would be able to meaningfully participate because they can jump into election and they're able to get whatever percentage of the vote by virtue of being in that election in a way that right now people are disincentivized from voting for them. So that's nice. For major candidates, you don't have the spoiler effect, so you're not going to be having to freak out because someone with a similar view jumped into your race, right? You could even collaborate with them. You could, whatever. You can be friendly and leverage that in different ways as opposed to having to pressure them to drop out of the race. So that's nice. There's also less divisiveness and toxicity for kind of a related reasons. Candidates need to get voters' second and third choices, so they can't just say that person's the devil. Yeah, so they need to avoid tearing each other down, and they need to actually bring forward, this is what I'm going to do, as opposed to just that person's awful. So we found that in study after study has shown that in elections with ranked choice voting, you do have less negativity in the kind of language that's being used. That's very nice. Candidates need to work towards a majority. They need to build a broad base of support so they can actually win as opposed to relying on this really low turnout, small party base. And so we actually see candidates teaming up occasionally. In New York City, we've seen this. There was some collaboration between Yang and Garcia in 21, Slom and Taylor in 23. And then an example you might be familiar with is the Mamdani race, where Mamdani and Lander they cross-endorsed. So I think this is just a really short video.
Hey, good morning. How's it going?
Can you hear this okay?
No, I insist you go second.
How about I go first and you go second?
Well,
We both love New York City.
and that's why it's so important to not send scandal-ridden, corrupt Andrew Cuomo to City Hall.
New Yorkers deserve so much better than a disgraced creep.
Agreed.
Zoran, you've done a remarkable job building a historic grassroots campaign for a New York City all New Yorkers can afford.
Brad, you've been a principled, progressive leader in our city for years.
Early voting starts tomorrow, and we both know what we need to do to save our city from Andrew Cuomo. You want to tell him?
You go first.
Nah, you go first.
Let's do it together. We're cross-endorsing.
In New York City, we have ranked choice voting. That means you can rank up to 5 candidates for mayor.
Brad and I are officially telling our supporters.
Rank
I'm
me
your
number one,
rank
Zoran
Brad
number 2. Let's send Andrew Cuomo
Back to the suburbs.
There you go. So that sort of thing can happen. That's I think the most prominent and extreme example of this happening. But you also see more minor ways that candidates just aren't as much jerks to each other because there's not as much reason to. So yeah, and that also incentivizes more candidates to run because they're like, hey, I can jump into a race and not have mess up the whole dynamic and that sort of thing. This really happened in Alaska where you saw candidates needing to appeal to all the voter base, and so that all voter primary that we talked about can be combined with ranked choice voting very effectively, as it is here. Majority Rule is a great film about it. Highly recommend that you watch it. There's a 30-minute version on YouTube. It's great. But anyway, there's for example, just an example in 2022 is that Mary Peltola, who is the Democratic candidate for House, she and Lisa Murkowski cross-endorsed, or at least like Murkowski endorsed Peltola, even though Murkowski is a Republican, because they had similar views, and there wasn't this, kind of, oh, you need to go as far to the left or as far to the right as you possibly can. It was like, hey, let's, help Alaska in a broad way. Let's be pro-fish. So yeah, so that's nice. All right, representation. So you don't need to wait your turn. You can just run. You don't have to be like, oh no, there's another woman running. There's another person of color, like person with similar identity. And so you actually do see the percentage of women and people of color really boosting, because currently they're underrepresented in most places. So representation under RCV in New York City, we saw the number of people of color go from 51% to 67%, which better reflects the number of people of color in New York City. And for women, it was super extreme in 2021 when this was introduced. It went from 20% to 61%. And there's still a majority of women on the city council in New York City. So that, again, better reflects what the population is, which is ideally what you want to do in a democracy. So that's the idea. I can show, I think it would really help anyone who is still a little confused. This is a really good way of showing what happened. So this is the New York New York mayoral primary last summer. And we can see what's happening here is that different candidates are being eliminated. It's like that elimination process we did before, and votes are being redistributed based on those like backup choices. So if we look at these initial rounds, we see these small candidates being eliminated and these little slivers being redistributed to other candidates. And then this is the most interesting part. So we saw that cross-endorsement video between Lander and Mandani. It's like, did anything come of that? Did that matter? When we see Brad Lander get eliminated, we're going to see a large portion of his votes go to Mandani. So you can see he received far more votes than Cuomo did from Lander voters. So yeah, that hopefully kind of shows some of that for you. Okay. People really love using ranked choice voting. These are the recent numbers of it being used in New York City. So we saw that like most voters were ranking multiple candidates. An enormous number of them found it easy to use, including at least 94% of each racial group. 76% of voters wanted to use it in future elections, and then 42% wanted to expand it to the general election. And it had historically high turnout. So that's great. That's all I have, but happy to talk about it.
All right. So maybe you want to take your screen share off so we can see people's faces. Do people have questions about how this works? Let's start at the sort of mechanical level. Any questions about how it works? Sharon Potts.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. I just wondered if there are any entrance requirements for people to run for the offices.
I think most places have the petitions, the signatures on petitions that you have to get to qualify. So in some places, those are a lot higher and more restrictive than other places. So that's a choice that we would make or somebody will make.
Somebody thinks, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just seems with everything going on in our country that it might be a good thing to have some more requirements for people running for public office, that they know the laws and that they know everything.
Yeah. I've never heard of any requirements like that. It's always signatures as far as I know.
Yeah. I didn't think so. I thought I just asked.
Well, I mean, I used to think that you couldn't be a convicted felon and run for office, but apparently that turned out not to be true.
Oh, interesting.
Because we've elected one now.
Can I ask a
Yeah,
question?
Marilyn.
So what happens if you didn't vote for any of the people that got the majority? Do you know what I mean? So let's say I ended up voting for all the candidates at the bottom of the, yeah. So what happens? So then does my vote not count?
You're gonna feel disappointed, that's for sure.
I mean, I could say, so it is an arbitrary decision to say like you can only rank up to five candidates. Like you could, if you had a race with 13 candidates, you could say, oh, let's have a 13 candidate long ballot. That's mostly just a like for the sake of it not being a crazy huge ballot situation. In Cambridge, Massachusetts, they still have crazy huge ballots. They're thinking about making them smaller. But if you did do like ahead of the election, you would probably know not to do that because you probably would have heard, hey, there's this popular person. I forget what the stats were, but I think in New York City, like a huge amount of people had either Cuomo or Mamdani somewhere on their ballot because they had a sense of like, well, it's good to have one of them as a backup choice because it seems likely that at some point it'll,
Okay.
end up being one of them. But yeah, but you could have had five minor candidates. I don't think that would be a super smart strategy. And I don't think it's probably what almost anyone did. But yeah.
So I've looked at some results, both from New York and from Oakland, where they used RCV last summer. And one thing I noticed is that the people who ranked uh, one of the top two most well-known names might have only ranked one or two voters, one or two candidates, whereas the people who their first choice was one of the obscure candidates without a lot of name recognition, they went ahead and ranked more right up to the maximum. So people seem to understand when they're voting for someone whose name isn't prominent that they they need to keep ranking to have their vote stay in play. Um, okay, Kim.
So I'm an election inspector,
Mhm.
and today I'm interested in the reaction of that first round when voters came out to do this, because there are still a lot of voters who have difficulty understanding the ballots, especially in races where you may pick more than one person, like judge races or um, uh, town races sometimes have those types of things, or where candidates are listed multiple times on different parties. And so I could see people being very confused by this, and you had very positive feedback on the reaction in New York City. How long did they go through trying to educate the public? And there must have been some negative reactions. I'm just curious what they were and how they were dealt with.
Yeah, they had a pretty robust education thing. They sort of viewed it as a one-time cost of the using of this that in 2021 when it was first implemented that we're going to go pretty hard on educating everyone. I saw the exit poll numbers for then was very similar to the ones for this past year. So I don't know that there were that many people who were at least who were like so confused they were like I didn't like the easy to use numbers were very, very high. Um, yeah, and we also didn't see like big disparities on, a racial or age basis or something like that. Anecdotally, I've definitely heard people who were like, "Hey, I didn't really like that process." Like you have people who don't like stuff. Um, but yeah, I haven't overall heard like really systemically bad feedback, if that makes sense. I think for any the current recommendation for any campaign is to try to include some funding for education. I forget what the recommendation is. It's not enormous, but it's just like if you're implementing a new system of voting, it's like you probably want to tell people about it and how it works in order for it to be a successful endeavor.
I do feel pretty good about our new voting machines, which really help people follow the rules by letting them know when they've made a goof, and uh, so they're less likely to spoil their ballot. Um,
I was thinking the same thing, Barb, because I would think the ballot would be huge under this type of scenario. And in the past, we had one-page ballots, right? Now we have the electronic machines, but we're a county that has them. The state doesn't have those machines. Um,
Yeah.
so
Well, remember, we're just talking about Rochester today, right? This is about whether we're going to push for a change to the city charter of Rochester. So when if and when we get to the state level, we'll have to think about that. I do have some sample ballots from some different cities. Maybe I'll share those. Uh,
Can I ask a,
sure.
so, so like, this sounds just terrible, but like in the town of Brighton, I know you're talking about the city, but in the town of Brighton, if we had an open, so you're not talking, are you talking about like an open primary?
I don't like to use the word open because it means a lot of different things to different people.
Okay. So
Okay.
anybody can vote in a primary.
In
Anybody
the primary, there's only one primary and everyone votes in the
can
same.
vote in the primary.
So there's no Democratic primary, there's no Republican
Right.
primary. There's a primary with everyone who wants to run.
So in this environment that we're in, let's say that it was that way in the town of Brighton, which is Democratic at this time. It sounds fairer, but it might give other people that I don't want to vote an opportunity.
Well,
That is
yeah.
the shame of that is the shame about democracy. Yeah.
You know, I will tell you from the town of Brighton perspective, because I've had just a little bit of experience there and running in quite a lot of campaigns over the years. I personally do not support open primaries. I think that if people um, have political viewpoints, um, they can join a political party that aligns with their thinking. But if you're going to have an open primary, then why bother having a general election? Because in the primary, if everybody can vote, you've got the answer. And why spend the money on another campaign, another election a few months later when you're going to get probably the same result? So to me, it's redundant and unnecessary, and I think counterproductive. And the other thing that um, I have heard over the years as a counter argument um, from those who, as you say, Marilyn, might want to vote, who really don't have and don't share the viewpoint of a particular party, to come in and um, and try and upset it by who you're voting for. So the supposition is that somebody from another party than the candidates could vote for the least popular candidate in order to try and upset the apple cart.
But Sandra, that's only true if it's a party primary.
If everybody is a registered voter, regardless of their affiliation from the registration, then they can vote in the primary no matter who's running and no matter what party those candidates happen to be aligned with and representing. So I think it's a bad policy, and I certainly don't support that.
Okay.
So
I do want to quick. Sorry.
Well, I was going to pick up on one thing Sandy said. She said, why have a general election? But I would flip it and say, why have a primary? Which is an active question. And I understand those from Albany have been talking about that. Should there be a primary at all? So we commissioned a study by the Center for Governmental Relations to look at what effect it would have on primaries. And there would be precious few primaries left because there are not very many, at least single winner elections. So think mayor, think congressman, where it's going to be narrowed down to one person who wins the election. There's very few races like that that have more than 4 or 5 people running. So you would have no need to have a primary at all.
And I can say, as of last night, the RCV Albany steering committee voted to like just do away with primaries and just have a single election.
Okay.
So yeah, they're calling it a single unified election. Just have one election in November. All comers vote. Use ranked choice voting.
And
Find the majority winner.
they're not specifying that there's a limit on how many people can be in the
Yeah.
general.
I mean, they have a situation where I don't know what the situation in Rochester is, but like they just have not had that many people run. Over the past 20 years, the most people in primary and general combined that have ever run for mayor are 5 people. So it's like, what's even
I'm
the point
sure it's
of
about
doing
this.
that?
Yeah, that's true here.
Sometimes when there are, and I think flipping it, as you've suggested, Barbara, might be the way this unfolds. I can see that certainly better than having both an open primary and a general election. That's the same thing, basically. But when you've got multiple people who are running for a particular party line, and then you go into a general election, and you may have a minor party candidate who's running. Another factor that I think we really don't know quite how that's going to unfold going forward, but given the fact that many local elections now have to be in even years, when you've got all of the major candidates running for higher office, one of the concerns that has emerged is won't the local candidates lose attention from the media, lose attention because most of the advertising, most of the interviews are with congressional or state candidates, not local candidates. And how are they going to get the message out as well as they might if they were the sole focus in the odd year elections? I love the fact that putting it in an even year will bring more voters to the table to actually vote than has happened in the past, because the turnout has been pretty pathetic for local elections, school board elections, and the like. But I guess I have some unanswered questions that I won't really know the answer to until we see how it works in real time. But I'm also concerned about how if you just go straight to a general election and you've got one party with one candidate and you've got another party with 2 or 3 candidates in a general election, the reality is when you've got 3 people running for the same office, and there are 2 different parties typically, the one who has the one party focus may end up being the winner because the others will divide the Democratic, let's say, vote as opposed to the Republican vote. Is that the best way to do it? Or is the primary better because you narrow it down and then you've got in the general election a one-on-one? And then you pick the one you want. So I have questions and concerns.
Well,
That's a lot of the. Go for it, Barbara.
What you're describing would only happen if that Republican candidate got more than half the vote on the first choices.
Well, what happens if none of the candidates get a majority?
Then you eliminate the lowest candidate, you reallocate their votes, the votes of those the votes of all those who chose the lowest party, lowest candidate, and you give them to their second choices.
But what if, and I'm talking also if you don't have ranked voting, if you have the straight voting,
Yeah, I wouldn't be in favor of that.
Yeah, that'd be very bad.
These two go together in my.
it's a problem. It's a problem.
Well, I wouldn't be in favor of doing one of these without the other.
Mhm.
Judy Wadsworth, it looked like you had a question or a comment.
I was going to say that bit is built into the process that because if the bottom one was taken out, then if it was for the party where there were two candidates, most of the people who selected them as their first would have selected the other person from the same party as their second, and then this person who was in second from the same party would then become the winner from the same party. So the process would eliminate that problem in a general election.
But there would, right, but there wouldn't be a number, there would be no controls on the number of candidates running unless, as David, you mentioned in Albany, they're talking about putting a cap on the number of candidates who can run.
No,
No,
in a
they just haven't
primary.
had that many people run,
Oh, I see.
so it hasn't been an issue. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to keep in mind that that election we talked about in New York City, that everyone was like, "Oh, this went so well," and all this stuff, that had like 13 people running. So,
Yeah.
you know, if we talk about maybe 25 people running, I don't know at what point it really becomes concerning, but like, you know, it went pretty well, and it was way more than you'd probably ever get in Rochester.
Yeah.
So, I mean, typically they ask people to rank like 4 or 5 choices. So if you had 20 people on the ballot, most people will not rank most candidates. So it's not a huge cognitive burden that there's other candidates there. I mean, most of those candidates don't really have very broad support and they'll fall off the ballot really fast. So the ballot looks a little intimidating. And I do worry a little bit about people who really have problems reading. I think that this probably multiplies their problems. And having worked as an election inspector, there's more of those people than we'd like to think.
Do you think that our voting machines, and I like the voting machines here a lot, the new ones. Do you think that they could accommodate this kind of change using those machines?
Well, if you think about a city council, an at-large city council race in Rochester, they had something like 14 candidates in the primary. So we know they can handle a long ballot. So can we add a couple more columns to make choices? I don't see why that would be a problem for our machines. I think it would be more a problem for the paper ballots, which, people who are voting absentee use.
Hmm.
Kim.
I'm curious, David, you said Albany has started this. Now, is it the city of Albany or is Albany a county? Or did you do it
Albany
across the
is,
whole
yeah.
county?
Albany is a county. The difference between county, an important difference between county and city when it comes to changing your elections, is that there's a mechanism in state law for cities to gather petitions and get a question on the ballot. So that's what Albany City is pursuing. They might have done that if it was a county-based thing, but on a county level, you need to get the county legislature to pass it. And so it's like a higher lift with people who are already incentivized to keep things the way they are because they got voted in this way. And this is usually the resistance to RCV is like, oh no, let's not shake up the power like I got in this way. So yeah, so on an Albany level, they're looking at city and they're looking at starting petition gathering probably sometime in February to get this on the ballot.
And I asked that question because of the way Monroe County seems to work. And the city, I've heard many people say the primary is really the election. You come out and vote in the primary, and that's who really wins there. So it's largely Democratic in the city, but the suburbs are largely Republican. So if we do something like this and focus only on the city, are we affecting one party versus the other when you look at the county? And is that something
I'll
we'd
tell
have
you,
to address?
this is how I think it would affect it. If you live in the city, you want to vote in the primary because that's where the real choice for city elections are. So, what would bring you back to the ballot in November? Uh, the only real things you'll have are countywide seats. So you could vote for the county exec and you can vote for your county legislator, some county judges. So I think that the city voting has been suppressed by the fact that the the primary has been the main election. So the weight of Democrats in the county, I think, was lower for many years because of that. I mean, if you looked at the numbers, Monroe County turned majority Democratic long before they started winning at the county level. And I think that's why. So that's the main way I can see it changing. I mean, otherwise, I mean, I live in the suburbs, that Republican suburbs, and I don't see it really having any effect. We seldom ever have any primaries out here. And I
Well,
mean,
I guess I'm just wondering, people that are running in the city, they're still part of the county party system, right? They belong to the Monroe County Democrats or the Monroe County Republicans. So if if we're able to put something together to try to sell this in the city, does it advantage one party versus the other? I don't really have this in my head. It's just something I'm thinking through. So by doing it only in the city, are you giving one party or the other an advantage? And then because it's so split with Democrats in the city and Republicans outside, I don't know what the play is.
I think today, I'm just going to add in, Kimberly, that today it's not quite as black and white as you portray it, city versus county. There's been a change in a number of towns in the suburbs where it's no longer a vastly majority Republican. And then the city, of course, continues to be majority Democratic. So I think that that shift has been happening over the last number of years, and I'm not sure it's easy to envision that it's going to advantage one party over the other, even at a county level, if the city goes this way.
Judy, what?
Thanks. I'm not sure. It's just something that pops into my head, wondering, is there something here that needs to be thought about? But
I don't
thanks for
really,
listening.
I don't know the answer to your question. All I know is that it's not as clear county versus city anymore. That I know.
For my part, I just can't see how it would, given that it would only affect city elections, right? If it affected county elections but only within the city, then I could see that potentially having impact. But given that it won't affect the county legislature at all, and then it'll only affect the structure of elections within the city, I don't know if there's some secret connective tissue there, but it doesn't feel like there would be, you know?
Well, so the other time, yeah, Judy Wadsworth, you've had your hand up for a while. You
Well,
go.
if the whole point with ranked choice voting is to eliminate primaries, then we solve the whole problem. We don't have to worry about the primaries in the city because there won't be any, and everybody will just be voting ranked choice voting wherever they are, and that seems like that's quite democratic. Why are we focusing just on the city and not the county as well and eliminate primaries, saving money for not having to pay people to work on the primaries, et cetera, the cost of campaigning, et cetera? and so on, and just go for if we're going to go for ranked choice voting, let's just go for ranked choice voting and eliminate primaries countywide.
Is that a question you want an answer to? The
Well,
reason is
it's
because,
something to consider. You said we were
no, it
considering all
is.
these things,
I mean,
and
we could think about doing county, proposing this at the county level, but there's seldom ever a county level primary, right? Has there ever been a county executive
I really
primary?
do, but it would be making it consistent for the whole county if we approach it that way. There are too many instances of people who are not city residents determining how city residents ought to do things. They come across as, how do I want to say it without bringing race into it? I can't. That this is a racist thing to do to impose on the city something you aren't imposing anywhere else. It works in New York City, though, so that is an argument in its favor. But it would seem like for the league, which isn't supposed to have any, like Kim raised, any kind of political ties to anything, that the way to overcome this is to set up a system that works for the whole county.
Well, speaking personally, I would like to do it for the whole state, but that's going to take a few years because not very many people really understand it and have heard about it. So starting in places where it will actually make a difference is a way of raising its profile and bringing closer the time when we can pass it at a state level. That's how I look at it. I mean, I think the fact that New York City's been doing makes it a lot easier to talk about it because people have at least heard about it there. So,
Just from the volunteer organizing standpoint, this is kind of anecdotal, but I was at the People's March over the weekend, and when I mentioned Rochester, all of a sudden, people seemed a lot more interested in talking about it because it's more related to where we live.
they were more interested in RCV in Rochester than
Yeah, like when I mentioned about we're working on a campaign at the state level, and we're discussing getting a campaign going in Rochester, and people asked to volunteer for that. So
that's interesting.
it's anecdotal, but it just seemed to me that people were a little bit more interested.
Okay. Susan.
So in New York City, the ranked choice voting is in the primary. Is that correct? So there's a Republican ranked choice voting and a Democrat ranked choice voting and a working party families, are all those primaries ranked choice votings?
They don't hold primaries aside from the Democrats in the city.
Oh, okay.
They could, right? If you had a slew of Republicans running for mayor, they would. And I assume they would be ranked choice then, David. Is that your understanding? That the law was written not for Democrats, but just
Yeah.
Working parties don't have primaries, right? The working party doesn't have a primary.
There are working party primaries every
Are
once
there?
in a while.
Okay.
yeah. Most of the time they designate at conventions rather than in primaries. But if they have multiple candidates, then they have to have a primary. Sharon.
Yeah, I'm just a little confused. It seems like we're talking about ranked choice voting, which could be in a primary or the general election. And then we're also talking about all party primaries. So, I mean, they could be separate issues, really. The ranked choice voting is one issue, and then whether to have an all party primary in addition to the general election is another issue. Am I getting it clear?
It's true. They could be separate issues. I like them together, so I'm proposing that we do both at the same time, which is
So you're not thinking that you're thinking that you need a primary and a general election, even if they're both
No,
ranked choice?
no, I didn't say that. No.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and in fact, I would love if we could, let me see. I would love to get a consensus here on whether people think we need a primary or not. So Albany decided they didn't need a primary because they just don't usually have a ton of candidates. Uh, So, I mean, let me show you a few sample ballots just to see what the reason would be to hold a primary. Okay, so hold on for a minute. Yes. All right, so this, okay. This is the primary election they had in Alaska in 2022. All right, so they had all of these people running for senator. And this was not ranked choice. This was just you vote for your top choice, and then the top 4 vote getters went to the general election. They had even more people running for the U.S. representative and fewer for the governor. So they were they had decided that this was too many. They didn't want to have a ballot where you did ranked choice with this many candidates. So that's why they held a primary. And then the general election just looked like this with 4 candidates plus write-ins for each of the offices. So if you think you're going to have that many candidates, I can understand thinking that a primary is a reasonable idea. Although I was surprised to see that they don't always do that. So no, that's not what I want. This is a Cambridge ballot. So this was their city council. So they had like 15 candidates for 9 seats. And they did do ranked choice with that many candidates. And last year in Oakland, they had 19, no, I think it was 15 candidates for mayor. So they asked people to rank their top 5 out of 15 or whatever the number was. This is how it looks in Minneapolis. So, if you think this ballot is overwhelming and that you really, I don't know.
They have so many parties. That's hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, there's the Renaissance Party and Nobody's Party are pretty intriguing, aren't they? So
I like the Why Not Wagner Party.
yes. It reminds me, I used to be an Africanist. I studied developing countries and specialized in Africa. And when they first got elections in a lot of different countries that had never had elections, they ended up with parties like Friends of Joe Blow. And that was the name of the party. And, they only got a dozen votes or something. But, so if you want your primary to be ranked choice, it's still going to be long, right? If you have a lot of candidates, it's going to be a long ballot. So what's the advantage of making people have a primary if they're already going to face a long ballot? That's kind of an interesting question. Okay, somebody's got their hand up, but I'm having trouble. Pat Willis, please.
So in Albany, there's no primary.
That's
So,
the proposal.
oh, okay, that's just a proposal. But so that would mean that everybody who wants to run for that office for mayor would all be in one election.
Yes.
So that's how that would be. And is there a cutoff or something that says no more than so many people, or they would just wait and see how many put their hat in.
How many people could get the petitions signed?
Get the okay, so and see what happens, and maybe it would be 50 people. Who knows?
It's
I mean,
never been more than 4 or 5 ever in history, but
okay, so whatever number of people get enough signatures on the petition to qualify, that determines the number of people. Okay, and then they're in that one election, and you skip the primary. You don't have that.
right.
I think there's really an advantage to having one election instead of two, just because that in
I mean,
itself.
I'm hearing that the current November elections in Rochester are a joke. Is that fair?
The
Because
city
like
election.
The
Yeah.
city.
so currently everything's kind of silly. So it seems like there is a benefit to saying, hey, let's just all have it all be in November.
So does anyone see why we would want to have a primary in these conditions? Is there anyone here who would like to say yes? I think a primary would be good. All right, that's a resounding silence, if nothing else.
I would like to see us try to apply it county-wide, though, as being in the Rochester metro area, and not try to apply it just to one part of our area.
Okay, Judy, do you understand that that would mean?
It would mean that hardly any change in most of the suburbs because they don't do primaries, but it would be something that we would say that we would think it would be that we
Okay,
would
but
support
if we really
countywide.
want it, we have to get thousands of signatures.
Oh, I see. So we
Well, we
would have
can't
to go up to, we have to, oh,
we
wow.
we can't even gather signatures. Is we have to convince the county legislature to pass that is what we need to do.
Oh, is that how it works?
Yeah.
Can
So
they?
we would have to count, we would have to lobby the county legislature to approve this kind of vote for county-wide office. So we'd have to do a county-wide. The only thing is we would be eliminating primaries, and that wouldn't be a factor for them if they aren't used to having primaries. But that's an interesting thought. That's going to take a lot of legwork to make this happen at the county level if we want it to work in county elections. So that's a factor we ought to consider as a league when we're making these decisions about how we're going to spend our time.
Sharon.
I just wondered, does anybody have any sense of how the county legislator feel about the ranked choice voting and not having a primary? Would you get pushback from them?
I'm guessing that they wouldn't be enthusiastic because they wouldn't see an advantage to it.
That's what I'm wondering. Yeah.
Yeah, Sandy, you had something else you wanted to
Yeah,
add.
I don't know where everyone lives who's on this call. Nor do I know what the ratio is of members of the local league in terms of suburban versus city residents. But I sure think it would be important to get a sense of where folks in the city might be thinking about these options before going headfirst into advocating and campaigning vigorously, because in the absence of educating and understanding and having support, it's not going to go anywhere.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Yes. And just FYI, about a quarter of league members are city residents. Yeah. All right, I would like to talk for a little while about city council and school board, because these elections look a little bit different because they have multi-party winners or multi-winners, right? So, well, the at-large city council, right? We've got 5 seats. Last year we had, I think, 14 people or 15 people running for those 5 seats. Those were the Democrats, and then there were I think 2 or 3 others who were non-Democrats who were on the general election ballot. So you can have a ranked choice ballot for elections like that. It looks just the same as what we've been talking about, but there's some issues about how to count it that are slightly different, and I only began understanding them recently. David, do you want to show us the little video about proportional representation with ranked choice voting?
Yeah, totally. So this is a system that's it is used by Cambridge, Massachusetts, and also used more recently by Portland, Oregon. But yeah, let me share about that.
Our traditional winner-take-all elections polarize our politics, reward gerrymandering, and leave millions of Americans without real representation. The solution to these problems is proportional ranked choice voting. Proportional ranked choice voting is the gold standard for electing legislators from City Council to the House of Representatives. Each district or community is represented by several members instead of just one, and those members are elected in proportion to their share of votes cast. Under this system, which is sometimes called the single transferable vote, nearly all voters help elect a candidate they support, a truly representative democracy. Here's how it works. First, voters fill out their ballots. Voters can rank candidates in order of preference: first, second, third, and so on. Voters can rank as many candidates as they want, but as we'll see, ranking gives our votes more power. Imagine a race between members of a purple party and an orange party. Let's say 5 candidates are competing for 3 seats. A candidate needs more than 25% of votes, even just one single vote more, to win a seat. The first choice votes are tallied. If we stopped here and elected the candidates with the most votes, the results are not representative. Orange would win 2 of the 3 seats, despite their candidates earning just 40% of the vote. That's why we need a proportional system. In round 1 with proportional RCV, Plum receives 35% of votes and wins a seat. No other candidates crossed the threshold in this round. Plum won a seat and got more votes than she needed, a surplus of votes. In round 2, people who voted for Plum have the surplus fraction of their vote count for their second choice candidate. This way, every vote is used in a way that is fair and has the greatest impact on the outcome. No ballots are wasted on candidates that have already surpassed the threshold, and everyone's vote counts the same. See how Plum's surplus votes, in dark purple, are distributed to voters' second choices: Rust, Violet, and Lavender. Most Plum voters ranked another purple candidate second, but some voters crossed party lines and ranked Rust. Rust reaches the threshold and wins the second seat. In round 3, we eliminate the last place candidate. Eliminating candidates is always a last resort. This only happens when there are seats to fill but no surplus to transfer. Lavender is eliminated. People who voted for Lavender have their vote count for their second choice candidate. See how Lavender voters' second choices in light purple now mostly count for Violet. Now Violet has reached 25%. Plum, Rust, and Violet are elected. Remember the purple party and the orange party? If we look at the first round of tallied votes, 60% of voters chose a purple party candidate, and 40% chose an orange party candidate. Proportional ranked choice voting preserved the purple party's majority by awarding them 2 seats, but also fairly awarded 1 seat to the orange party. Now the winners more accurately reflect the voters. Under our current single winner elections, purple would win, there would be only 1 representative, and orange voters wouldn't have anyone in office to represent them. Proportional ranked choice voting produces better results for all of us, whether we consider ourselves red, blue, purple, orange, or something else. For more information on proportional ranked choice voting, visit fairvote.org.
There you go.
So
I can help clarify about that. I know there's a lot of that was the 201 seminar. But yeah,
I would
it
I
is
would expect voters to try to sort that out.
it is very interesting that is the method that was used mid-century. So in several Ohio cities and New York City, Cambridge, all of the like progressive era places that used it, they used that system. I don't know that they, as far as voter education, if they focus super heavily on like here's the math behind it. But like, yeah, it was kind of just like go in, rank my ballot, and then
Yeah.
it'll end up proportional.
So I've been playing in my head with how the counting matters. Like right now we don't have ranked choice, right? So we choose 5 out of 15. So you figure that a lot of the people who vote in the primaries in Rochester are tied in with the party. They might be on their neighborhood party committee. They got there because they're friends with somebody who's in office in their district. They they might tend to vote um, for the 5 people that the party chose to endorse. They don't always, that's for sure. But it could be that a minority of voters that vote in a concentrated way could take all the seats because the others are spread out among the other 10 candidates. And so it could actually make quite a difference. So I was talking with Kim Smith, who's someone you know her. She was city council and now she's on local New York. And she was convinced that the poorest people that haven't been able to understand the system could gain a lot through this kind of change in how we vote and how we count votes. Yeah.
I also, oh, go for it, Susan.
Yeah, I just didn't understand. And I guess this is a small point, but I didn't understand how the purple votes got distributed to the other people.
Yeah.
Which purple votes did you decide were excess?
Yeah.
And then for lavender, what if lavender had voted for purple
Yeah.
down the ballot? What happened to their purple votes? I didn't
Yeah.
understand where the votes were going.
Yeah, so the key point there is that when those votes are being redistributed, it's actually a fractional vote. So it's almost as the voter, it's less like you have like one vote that is indelible and like it's just a vote, and it's more like you have like a dollar you're spending, and maybe 80% of your dollar will go towards electing a candidate, but if they get more votes than they actually need to win, then 20 cents of that will go to your second choice. So that's how those ended up there when it was redistributed. So yeah, that was I think the first part of your question. I don't know if that answered the second part of your question.
Oh, the second part was, what if lavender had voted for purple? What happened to, and those votes were redistributed. What happened to their purple vote?
So if I think you're saying if someone put like a backup choice that was already eliminated, is that accurate to that scenario?
Or already chosen.
Or already chosen.
Or already chosen, exactly. So then it would just advance to the next candidate. So just look at the next choice on your ballot if they're already chosen or if they're already eliminated. Yeah. So it is important to note that in ranked choice elections and proportional elections, like you do have some ballots that do end up like not contributing to the final winner. Like that is because you'll have people, maybe someone ranked all these minor candidates and then like their vote doesn't end up getting used. Like, unless you have the top 2 people on your ballot somewhere, but we don't usually know who those people will be, then you could end up having it not like contribute as meaningfully. But it's much, much better than what we have now.
So I actually read the instructions from Cambridge, like that the way they originally wrote their regulations for counting. And what they did was like, so someone who had all those surplus votes, suppose a fifth of their votes were extra votes, they would go take every fifth ballot
Yeah.
from and reallocate those ballots,
Yeah.
which is
I think
of
that's how all the mid-century ones did it. I think when they were doing it, then they were, yeah, it was just randomized to whatever
it
the
was
proportion
before
was.
computers were being used for everything. Nowadays, you would just have a spreadsheet and give it a rank, a count of 20%. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that the really key part of the proportional RCV, like if so, one thing is currently you have 5 seats that are large, I believe, right? You have or four, whatever it is, 5 seats, I think. And so those like that is a problem for representation. Like this is really, really common to have lawsuits associated, like lawsuits on the basis of civil rights around having at-large seats, because when you have an at-large seat, you are just representing whatever the majority is, and the majority of the city is getting all of the seats. Like that is just how that math works. And so, I think there is currently a lawsuit in Rochester, unsurprisingly, about this. I don't know where it'll end up, but it's, saying, hey, civil rights law, this isn't cool. So what can happen occasionally is that you have proportional representation be, the same system be a remedy for that scenario. So to go about this would be sort of a proactive way of saying, hey, we can solve this at-large problem by, just having a fully representative system. The outcome really is a gold standard, even if the steps to get there on a mathematical basis are, more complicated than would be ideal. So just a note on that.
Yeah. All right. So, any more questions or comments? Susan.
Sorry. Well, I did notice that on one of the ballots that you showed, they did have parties listed.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
common that they would list the party of the
Okay.
candidate.
The one thing that I objected to, the one ballot I saw indicated who was a candidate for reelection. And I just thought that wasn't fair. that 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 gave them either an advantage usually, or maybe a disadvantage if you're voting against the incumbents, but it just seemed like a strange thing to do.
Yeah, that's an interesting comment. Yeah, just in the last few days was the first time I saw putting incumbent on the ballot. I've never seen that in any other
I
context.
used to run the office election pool. And so one time I forgot to designate, and I designated incumbents. And one race I forgot to designate the incumbent. And it upset it made a different person win the office pool.
Yeah.
For which I apologized.
So even in a place like where you worked, which is a workplace full of highly educated people, they didn't recognize the names of the incumbents.
Well, because I did I did everything that anybody lived in. So it might have been the highway superintendent in Sweden or something like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. We haven't ever had a highway superintendent participate in vote 411. Then I've never seen a contested election there either. All right. Well, I think we seem to be at a stopping point here. So there seems to be a pretty strong consensus that primaries don't really add much to this process. So that's interesting, because until a week or two ago, I just thought primaries were the natural order of things, and apparently that's not necessarily true.
I was just going to say that I was primaried as a representative to the Brighton Democratic Committee. Last year or the year before, there was actually competition for being
For almost all of the Brighton Democratic Committee.
Yeah. And it was I thought it was a good thing, actually. I thought it was a good thing. Yeah.
So that's got to be a partisan vote, right? Because it's a party seat. So we end up with having elections, primary elections in June that would only be for party seats, and then the elections for elective office are only in November.
Right. Right. Although I think people, it was really hard for me to understand that being on the Brighton Democratic Committee meant that I was representing an election district. I don't think people understand the hierarchy, so that was a interesting education.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to say.
Okay. All righty. Okay, I think I'm gonna thank everyone for coming. This has been recorded. It will be online soon. Thank you, David, for coming out and helping us wrestle this stuff around. And I hope to see a lot of you at our January 31st meeting. And we'll see where we go from there.
If you want to stay on our list at unitedny.org, feel free. We're pretty fun. And hear more nerdy election stuff.
Yeah.